Okay, for today's video, I want to talk about ports, primarily USB micro. So I have this camera that I bought at work to use on some projects and grants. On the side, we've got our port output. Now this is the Sony a6600, so it's a bit of an older body design at this point, which people have been kind of complaining about. As such, it does not have USB-C. They haven't really touched the design almost in, probably 5 years at least at this point. So when I open this up, I've got 4 ports. I've got a headphone port, I've got a mic port. These are both just 3.5 millimeters, so and I've also got a micro USB port for charging and data and a micro HDMI port. Now you'll see on these that these look almost identical. Now I know which one is which because I've gotten used to it, but even so, when I go to plug this in to charge, I still have to kind of remember, now wait a minute, which one is which? They're labeled on the outside of the port cover, and it just says multi for USB because you can charge it and you can get the data off, and I guess something else maybe. But that's it. There's nothing on the inside to tell you which one's which, and they really look almost identical. They're the same kind of weird trapezoid shape, same kind of size. I guess the HDMI one has a couple more pins, but that's about it. And just what's annoying about this is that the USB micro is just not a good port either. I would say that USB doesn't really have a history of making good port decisions. USB A is the one everybody's like, oh, you got to put it in 3 times. Obviously, we all know that. But it's also kind of old at this point, so I'd give them a pass. I don't think it's that big a deal. What really bothers me is making decisions like this on a camera where they're almost identical. They don't have like a good satisfying click to them or anything like that. It's just not a good port. And then it gets even better because people just tend to use whatever port they want to use, even if it's not the best situated, if it's not the best port for the job. So I've got the blue Yeti mic that I use at work, just like pretty much everybody. That's what I'm using now. So this audio is going to be all weird. Have fun. But on the bottom, you can kind of see it's a real small USB connector. This is a USB mini, which is not micro. It's very close, just a little bit bigger. Still kind of a trapezoid, a little bit bigger. I don't understand why they do a USB mini on a full-size desktop microphone like this. It's a really flimsy port. I've actually had to solder some back in place on other microphones, not this one. But I've seen the same thing with this mic where it gets kind of loose because you move the microphone back and forth on the stand, which pulls a lot of stress on that connector if you don't have it with enough slack. And there's no reason that it needs to be this small. You can see on the microphone there's plenty of space. Even if you say, oh, you got to make it a little bit longer. So make it a little bit longer. Nobody's going to care. Put a USB-B, the weird printer cable. It's not pretty. It's the only USB connector that I can get in reliably, like on one go, provided you can see it. It's hard on the back of a printer when it's hidden, I'll give you that. But it's also just a lot sturdier. It's not going to snap off when something goes wrong. And this is a desktop microphone. You're not carrying this around. You don't need it to be this tiny little port. This isn't a microphone that's being made for size, like to make it as small as possible. There's plenty of space for a larger connector on here. And yes, there's a lot of mics that at this point are using USB-C, but even USB-C has kind of its own problems. Like it gets kind of loose over time. There's the issue of like, well, is this USB-C? Is this Thunderbolt over USB-C? Is this Thunderbolt 4 that's also the USB-C speed? It gets so confusing. But really, in the end of the day, there's just no one perfect port, except for FireWire 400.